about 30 years. I'm just going to take a minute to explain a few terms you're going to hear tonight that might be confusing. You'll hear the words marijuana, which is a made-up name. Nobody knows where it came from. It was first seen in the Hearst newspapers when he began the campaign to make marijuana illegal. He kind of associated it with Mexicans, who, to tell you the truth, were never big users, but in his campaign that was very important. You'll hear the word cannabis, and that's the real name of what we're talking about. It comes from the Hebrew cannabis, which means kind herb, and it's the oldest medicine known to man. It's been found in ancient Egyptian tombs and in Hebrew tombs, and it was used in Chinese medicine. And generally the word is associated with cannabis. Also, that's where the word canvas came from, because all the canvas in the sailing ships and all the ropes were made of cannabis, were made of hemp. And you'll hear the word hemp. Now, the difference between cannabis and hemp, they're the same plant, Cannabis sativa. Cannabis, that we'll be talking about tonight, is grown for the tops and the flowers and the medicinal purposes. It has a very thin stem, and it's used for medication. Of course, it's occasionally used for recreation, which happens to be the same thing. Anytime you smoke cannabis for recreation, you're also medicated, whether you use it to relax or go to sleep, or just get your troubles off your mind. All use of cannabis is medical, no matter what they say. Hemp, on the other hand, is grown for its stem, which is thick and big. And hemp is the oldest plant known to man from which they made clothing. Hemp seeds are perhaps the real manna from heaven instead of wheat, because hemp seeds have all the nutritional value needed in the body. Hemp, when this country was founded, was mandatory for every farmer to grow because he could make his clothing out of it. They used it as building materials. They used it as fuel. In fact, today, if you were to use it for biofuel, like corn is used today, you get about 10 times the return that you do from corn, and it wouldn't be a subsidized fuel. You know, Diesel invented his engine to run on hemp. Ford built a car out of hemp. Our first plastics were made out of hemp. And that's a replaceable product. And about 10 times as strong as steel. There's about 25,000 products today that can be made commercially out of hemp. It is illegal to grow hemp in this country. And that's where the story begins. Because a man by the name of Hearst, who owned all the Hearst newspapers, also owned a company by the name of Kimberly-Clark and St. Regis Paper. Now, between them, they owned millions, not thousands, but millions upon millions of acres of pulpwood trees. And that was what was used to make newsprint. And if you remember, Hearst pretty much controlled the newsprint in this country. Now, at the beginning of the 20th century, a machine was invented called a decorticator. And that did for hemp what the cotton gin did for cotton. It made production and harvesting simple and not labor intensive. They found they could make paper for about 25% the cost of what it cost to make paper out of pulpwood. And of course, 1 acre of hemp made more paper than 4 acres of pulpwood trees, and they took 20 years to grow. You can harvest hemp in anywhere from 10 to 16 weeks. It's not hard to understand that at that point, Hearst was pretty upset, because millions of acres of pulpwood trees would all of a sudden become worthless. They had trees in this country, in Canada, in Mexico, in Russia, and all over the world. In fact, in Mexico, they had confiscated from Hearst 800,000 pulpwood trees. Now, as you may recall, Hearst was a racist, and Mexicans were the people he hated the most, and maybe that was the reason. In any case, he started a crusade in his newspapers in the 1920s, trying to drive the hemp business out of business. He didn't know how he was going to do it, so he would print horror stories about marijuana. They would say, it made Mexicans go out and kill their wives, it made white women chase black men, and of course they said marijuana created the greatest evil ever known to man, jazz. Because jazz musicians were really the only ones who smoked it, and they actually tried to pass a law against playing jazz. The real reason you can't get marijuana as medicine today is because they wanted to make hemp illegal, and the only way they could do that was to attack marijuana. How can you attack something like hemp, which, you know, was legal tender in this country? For years you could pay your taxes and pay your bills with hemp. When people went out west, the covered wagons, the canvas was hemp. Levi made his pants out of hemp. Today, hemp clothing is very popular, except every bit of it has to be imported. In this country, we import about $50 billion worth of hemp just for national defense. And there was another company that had little interest in making